so much.
Always go for Simchas.
A Kohen Day.
David?
Okay.
All right, so today's shiur is called.
So, Louis Nishmas.
Oh, first of all, we're going to learn Lelias Nishmas. Everybody's saying Tehillim.
No, that's before Shlema. Okay.
I will say Lelias Nishmas Rabbi Yosef.
And
And
also,
Rachel Meini for that matter.
Who was saying,
Okay. And for Shlema Yibad L'chaim, Elisha ben Chaya Yehudis.
Okay. And also, Sandy's brother passed away. Louis Nishmas, a brother, Baruch Yehuda ben
Lili
David.
Nishmas Baruch Yehuda
Ben David.
ben David. Shabbat Shalom and Aliyah.
Amen.
Okay. So we are at a very interesting time, as always, between Parshas Lecha and Vayera. And if there's a common theme, it centers around which nation or city-states, the 5 city-states of Sodom. So the title of our shiur is, What's Good About Sodom? Is there anything good about it?
It was nice weather, good.
Yeah, it was a machlokas in the Medrash whether it was a beautiful place to begin with, but the pashut shot, the simple shot, is that it was gorgeous. It was stunning. Okay, California, a lot of comments.
Before the
A lot of
storm.
comments.
What was
A lot
stunning- what
of
was
stories
stunning-
there.
What was
Okay.
stunning
The
about
fire.
It says it was like a lush garden, lush, plush, wealthy. And I think that that's really our point of beginning. We have 2 encounters of Avram with Sodom that are very, very instructive. And I'd like to go through them with you because I think it tells us an awful lot about Avram. And it also tells us a lot about the nature of the evolving process of Avram becoming Av Hamon Goyim. Some Goyim he was very successful with, some less so. Sodom, sadly, was one of the nations that he did not succeed with. Where was he very successful? Es hanefesh asher asa be'aram. Right? He even had a lot of fans, in Ur Kasdim. Anybody know where Ur Kasdim is?
With the oven where he was thrown into that one.
Fiery furnace by none other than Nimrod, who we Chazal identify as Amraphel. Amraphel, one of the 4 kings that Avraham conquered, and that was from the home country, and the home country was all the way southern Iraq, literally across the water from Iran. You can't be any closer to Iran than Ur Kasdim, which is truly amazing. But that's where Avram's career began, because it was at that time that he became famous. All right.
Is it because of that miracle that he attracted the people?
Yeah, and Chazal tell us that the miracle was being spoken about, but it wasn't confirmed until something to do with the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom also experienced a miracle. What was his miracle during the war? It says that they were running from the 4 kings, and the battle took place in a place called Emek Hasidim, which was bitumen, which I still till today don't know what bitumen is. What's that?
It's
tar.
clay.
It's a tar pit. A clay. It's clay, right? It's like a sinkhole. It's like a quicksand of sorts. Clay. You're not going to get out of there. Be'erot chemar. Wells. So there was liquid and just went in there and it was all gooey and stuff, and you never got out of there. Vayanusu melech Sodom va'amora vayiplu shama. The Torah tells us that they fell into those pits. All right. Now, if they fell, the Hanisharim and the remainder, Hera Nasu, they fled to the mountains. Now, how many kings were there to begin with? There were 5 cities. There were 5 cities. Were they good guys? Were they the good guys or the bad guys in this milchama? What did Rashi say? The 4 kings. Who was the good? Who was good versus evil? Was there any good? In any case, Rashi says nothing negative about the 4 kings except one, that it was Amraphel, right? Amraphel was Nimrod, the arch enemy of Avram. But other kings included Chador LaOmar, who, according to Yaacov Weinberg, was none other than Hammurabi, who gave a human code of conduct that's still famous today. It was like law and order. That's one of the Shev Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. That's not a bad thing. Law and order is a good thing. Okay? So he wasn't so bad. The other kings we don't know, but each one of the Sodom kings was described as exceedingly evil. All right? How? Rashi says, for example, Bera. Like, let's contrast this. Tidal Melech Goyim, Rashi says, is one of the 4 kings. He says it was called that way because that's where he became king. Okay, that's not bad. That's political. But Bera, it says Ra l'shamayim v'Ra l'brios. Like Bera. Ra, just rotten to the core, right? He was rotten to people and he was rotten to Hashem.
Excuse me, he was part of the 4 kings?
5.
Oh, the 5, really?
The 5 kings. Now the 5 kings are the kings that, who did Avram fight for? The 5 kings.
Right.
So the first question is, why is he fighting for the bad guys? Okay? Birsha, Shenis'ala Birisho. He was a very successful in evil. He was fantastic at doing evil. That was his strong suit. Like, what do you do well? Evil. Okay? What's on his resume? Shin of Soneh could be understood as Sina. Sina Aviv Shebashamayim. Okay, he wasn't so bad to people, but he was pretty rotten to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shem Aver, again, he's against God. Sam Aver La'uf V'likpots V'limrod B'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He flew to great heights in his rebellion against Hashem. I just have to throw in something. Speaking about influences. Did you know Albert Einstein, for 1 year of his life, was really thrown?
Just 1 year?
1 year.
At least one.
What happened was, this is like a sad story of German Jewry, but he grew up in Munich. And there was no call for Jewish education. There was not one yeshiva. Not one. Isn't that sad? And he was born like 1879. Reform. It took 100 years. 100 years of reform. And there was not one Jew. I mean, even when Shabshafon Hirsch got to Frankfurt, it was already completely decimated of Yiddishkeit. There were 14 Shalom Shabbos families when he got left. The city of Frankfurt, a city of great Torah and Rabbanim for centuries. It was like a nuclear bomb. That's how reform hit. It was a nuclear bomb. It was instantaneous. But anyway, he said that there was no schools, so they put him in a Catholic school, and he knew more. He was the tutor of the other kids in the New Testament. He knew it better than he knew anything else. He wasn't a great student either, but that was good. That he was good at. And then finally, he had a change of schools when he was 11. He graduated to whatever age. And by law, Germany required that if you have a certain amount of religious students, they have to receive religious education. So there wasn't core Jewish students, and they had Jewish malamed, paid by the state to teach them. He was enthralled. He became like a Balshevik. He said he was so religious, he was composing his own prayers. He had a problem when he spoke to himself. He thought he was crazy. He literally spoke to himself, but in the end, that was his greatness, because everything he discovered, where he was going to go to a laboratory, everything that he figured out, he did it in a conversation with whom? Mostly with himself. And then after he had the conversation with himself, he would talk to other people to explain it to them. It was known as thought experiments. Right? It was thought experiments. He would ask himself, what would it be like to ride on a train that was going the speed of light, and 2 lightning bolts come? Which one am I going to see first? He created all these mind games, and he imagined, Hashem put into his head, solutions to the problems that he was formulating, which was brilliant. But, you know, what happened to the Frumkeit of Einstein? He says one friend gave him a book about science, and that was that. He rejected religion completely and totally for the rest of his
But
youth.
I always wonder if science is not really in contradiction to religion.
That's exactly the problem. He read somebody who made an apology between religion and science that they could be compatible. He didn't like the answers. He liked the questions better than he liked the answers, and he ran with the questions. Isn't that sad? But, you know, here we see the Yad Hashem, because had he become full, you know, we wouldn't have had, the atomic bomb to end World War II. Really, if you want to look at it that way. And you wouldn't have had his 5 Miracle Year papers, which he gave in 1905, as we have said previously, the year 5666, which was the acceleration of wisdom in the world, and he got it. He was delivered to his brain papers that would change our view of reality and start the preparation of the world into a, quote, Kates HaPlaos, the miracle end. Science, technology, the expansion of human intelligence through technology, the advancement of human power, and also the advancement of human evil, because of all the weaponry and the mass destruction, and just look at what the Germans were able to do in a short period of time, utilizing their technical know-how. So, you know, so Sodom was a tricky thing. A very tricky thing. They were very evil. You know, that's the guy that gave him the science book. Sona Avishmai says, Einstein, what are you wasting your time with Yiddishkeit? You know, rebel against God. And he did. Until when? Until Hitler came to power. When Hitler came to power, he was in America with his wife, who was his cousin. It wasn't his first wife. She was Jewish. Second wife was Jewish. He didn't have any kids, as far as I know. So he had kids with his first wife, but that's another story. But it disappeared. Oh, he wanted to divorce his first wife, and she had a child with 2 children. And one was like institutionalized, mentally ill. The woman apparently was a little bit mentally ill. She was a very brilliant physics person. And when he won the Nobel Prize, he gave all of the money to her, so she would agree to divorce. That's where his Nobel Prize was.
She was around Jewish or something?
And then he was stuck in America, and because he saw the discrimination against the Jewish people, even though he had no respect for Jewish religion at all, but he did have a respect for the Jewish people, which is what Hashem says. I wish that you would forget me, but remember my people. And in that sense, that was his Yiddishkeit. He raised money for Israel, right? He did 2 major things that were good for the Jews. Well, obviously the whole, whatever you would scientifically, but he became an advocate of Zionism, and he started campaigning, and he went on a fundraising tour to raise money for Israel. And that's why he was supposed to be the first president. Because Chaim Weizmann was makar of him, as if you could say that, to the cause. And he responded to the fact that Jews are suffering, they're being discriminated against. He was discriminated against. The first thing Hitler did when he came to power was to ransack Einstein's house and burn his books. He said that science is in German. It's Jewish. I don't want any part of it. And we'll regret that later. Anyway, back to our 5 kings. So evil is evil. Why was Avram fighting for them?
To liberate his business.
Exactly. There was something very precious buried within Sodom, that wasn't going, that Avram could not let go of, and that was Lot. Why is Lot very precious to Avram? What made Lot important to Avram? Well, he was mishpacha, right? But that didn't stop him from leaving his father behind, right? So I don't know if mishpacha, in terms of God's work, was the ultimate consideration. There was something else. Lot had done an incredible thing, that he merited to have a spark of the Mashiach embedded within him. What did he do? What was the great thing that Lot did for Avram and Sarah? Really saved them. When they went down to Mitzrayim, at the beginning of last week's parsha,
Yeah,
what happened was
he
he kept his mouth shut because Imrina Chotiat Manyetu Liber. So Avram got massive wealth from Paro, and for being the brother of Sarai, but who was really the brother of Sarai? Lot. He could open his mouth and say, "This guy's a fraud. Avram's a fraud. I'm the brother," and he could have. He didn't. He had a hakaras hatov to Avram and Sarah for taking him out and bringing him to Eretz Yisrael and making him part of the Jewish people, at least to that point. Okay? So Lot's spark of goodness emanated from his loyalty. And what didn't he do? Speak Lashon Hara. Do you see how powerful Lashon Hara could have destroyed everything? And silence and keeping the confidence brought it on Mashiach. The Neshama Mashiach became embedded in Lot. When does it start to emerge? How does it start to emerge? After Sodom is destroyed, right? So his daughters, one is Ammon, one is Moab, and Ruskin. Okay, so Lot had a good aspect. And that's the big story about Sodom. In fact, the Medrash tells us that when Yosef was sold, and Avram was and Reuven was mourning, and Yosef was in trouble, and Yehuda was Yered Be'echav. Where was Hashem? Hashem was at Sodom, preparing the way for Mashiach. Why Sodom? Why Sodom? Sodom is a place of evil. Even the good spark of Lot came out in a very evil way. Because as Chazal tell us, Medrash says that Lot fell into that because he was in Sodom. Had he not gone to Sodom, the spark would have come out in a decent way. You understand? But the fact that he became subsumed with gathering wealth, and he also wanted freedom to do whatever he wanted to gratify his desires. And he said Sodom is the perfect place for that. And he wanted to go to Sodom so badly. He was even embarrassed to go back to Avram because he knew, what are you doing? What's going on over here? And even more deeply, Medrash says an incredible thing. The day that the angels arrived at Lot's house, it's coming week's parsha, what was Lot doing that day? Where was he that day? He was judge. He became the chief justice of Sodom. Now, the Medrash lists out their names, and they're basically like these five guys: the king of bribery, the king of fawning, the king of corruption. The judges, the Supreme Court judges of Sodom, each one was more wicked than the next. Lot was placed on top of them. What happened? So, the Medrash says an incredible thing. It says, when he said something that they liked, they gave him a raise. When they said something he disagreed with, started talking about mitzvahs of Bnei Noach, and not stealing, and not murdering, and not robbing, and not killing, they demoted him. So what happened was Lot ended up legitimizing evil. He became a rubber stamp because he was associated with Avram Avinu. And the day that goodness works in the service of evil, as opposed to trying to transform it. Maybe he thought he was trying to transform by going along with them. In fact, that was his whole sheet. I'll give you my daughters, but don't do this big evil. He was corrupted himself by evil, and he could not get out of that quagmire. That's what happened to him. So why did Avram fight for the five kings? Because of Lot. But he didn't know how low Lot had descended. The proof of this is that when Avram davens for Sodom, right? Davens for Sodom. What's the limit that he goes down to? 10. 10 for all of the 5 cities. Okay? Meaning that at tzaddik, and who were these tzaddikim that he thought of? Who were going to be the tzaddikim? The judges that worked under Lot? Not them. Who were Lot? Lot would be the tzaddik that would daven for them. Lot and his wife, and his 3 daughters, and it only came out to 8 people. So Avram said, I'm throwing in the towel. Why did Avram throw in the towel? You risked your whole life to save these people. We'll see in a minute what his encounter was with the king of Sodom, which is truly remarkable.
What about Amora?
Yeah, Amora doesn't get out of the pit.
Doesn't get away.
We only see one king survive, and that was Melech Sodom. Doesn't say the other 4 kings disappeared. Amora fell into the lime pit with him, whatever it was, and the other 3 ran to the mountains, headed for the hills, as
Amora
they
was a
said.
person and not the city? You're not talking about the city?
It was a city.
Oh,
There were 5 kings of 5 cities.
They
They were all destroyed, except one that Lot said, Zohar, I want to go to that city, because I don't want to go anywhere. Okay. So, if Avram had spent so much time, effort, risked his life, put himself in tremendous mortal danger to spare the cities of Sodom, and does he take anything for it? Does he take anything for it?
No, not even
No?
a thread.
Not even Lichut ad Srochanah. We'll get to that in a second, what happened there with the king. So the question is, so why did Avram give up at 9 or 8? Why did he give up? Goodness, keep going, you're on a roll. The Medrash does say that he sensed that Hashem had had enough. Okay? But why did Avram stop? Keep going. Right? And in fact, the Medrash says that one person could save Yerushalayim, but it would take 10 to save Sodom. Why?
So we
So let's go a little further. I'm going to ask a second question because Jews like to ask questions. Right? The second question will help answer the first question. What's our first question? Avram is contradictory. He wants to save Sodom. He gives them back all their things. He rescues Lot. Does he take Lot back with him? No. He leaves him there. And everything is important to him at Sodom. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to davening for Sodom, why does he just get up and say, in the merit of Lot, who is carrying the spark of Mashiach, the hope of mankind rests within Lot. Why wouldn't he say, let Lot save them? Or I'm going to ask you a better question. What should he have said? In the merit of me, Avram Avinu, please save Sodom. After all, who was the new Melech of Sodom, really? Do we find a king anymore? In the story of the three angels, when they go to Sodom, is there any king over there? Who's in charge? Lot is in charge. The king got fired, as we'll see. He really took it on the head from Avram Avinu. He said, no more of this nonsense. No more of these wicked kings. We're going to put Lot in charge. And at least on the surface they agreed, right? It's always to be politically correct. They showed themselves to be great people, but what was really going on? Does it sound like politics today? Does it sound like anything? Surface. Those rules of law. We have to do the right thing. Nobody can violate the law. Nobody's opposed to the law. Right. So, why does he give up? Why doesn't he rely on Lot? And then why does he rely on someone? So that's a question. We have to ask another very basic question that maybe you thought of, maybe you didn't, but it's an obvious question. Avram did not want to take the wealth. Let's read it inside. As we said, it says, Vayikhu, they took away everything, right? The 4 kings. Avram comes back, and he, Vayashev es kol harachush, he brings back all the money. V'gam et Lot, also Lot, Achiv, his brother, Urechusho, and all of Lot's property, which was considerable. Heishiv, V'gam es hanoshim, v'gam es ha'am, everything, right? So, Vayetze melech Sodom l'kraso, so the king of Sodom comes out to thank him. Wouldn't you? Where are the other kings? They're done. They're dead. He's the last guy. He's now the king of all 5 cities. So he says, when he comes to strike down Chedor LaOmer and the kings that were with him, why not Amraphel? Why not Nimrod? Okay, because as we'll see, Sodom is setting himself up as the opposite of Chedor LaOmer. Ve'es HaMalachim Asher Ito that were defeated. El Emek Shaveh Hu Emek HaMelech. Says Rashi, based on the Medrash, who do they come to coronate as their new king? Avram Avinu. As it says that you will be Lenesi Elohim Ulekatzin. That's Medrash Rabbah. Not only them, but Kol Ha'umos, everybody. So who's king of Sodom? Really, really, really? Avram. Okay? Does he deserve to take everything? Does any of this stuff belong to anybody but Abraham? So the Forshim all go into the Orchaim HaKadosh, and also Vince in his Sefer, they prove halachically that when somebody saves a lost cause, who does it belong to? It depends. It says, if an army comes and defeats a people and steals all their stuff, and then someone comes and retrieves it, like Avram did here, who gets to keep the stuff? Who gets to keep the rechush? Depends. If the owners were misyayesh, that they said, listen, we have no hope. We have no hope of getting this back. We don't have the power, the strength, the ability to do it. Then it belongs to the rescue. If they weren't miyayesh, if they didn't give up, then it belongs. Then they share their expenses and they get their stuff back, but they'll take a portion of what they got, deserve for saving it, etc. They make a deal. So,
It's the same you remember as when you find something and the owner.
exactly. Yes. It's worth in the same context.
And this place was so evil, why would one want to have anything from that city?
Oh. So you answered the question before I asked this. Let me ask the question. You gave one answer. Okay. The question is, Avram refuses to take anything from the city, even though it's halachically and rightfully his. And he says, Baruch, he says, Vayomer Melech Sodom al Avram. After a brief interlude, they were interrupted by somebody rudely. Who rudely interrupted this conversation? Who all of a sudden shows up and makes the whole thing? Malki Tzedek Melech Shalom, the king of Yerushalayim, otherwise known as Shem, the son of Noah. And he gives Avram Lechem v'yayin. And then we go back to Melech Sodom. So that's the next question. Like, hello, it was like an advertisement, it's like a commercial. What happened? And now back to our regular scheduled programming. So let's go back. We'll head back there. But first he says, Im michut va'atzro chanal ve'im ekach mikol asher lach v'lo tomer ani esharti es Avram. I made Avram rich. Then he says, Biladai rak asher achlu hanarim. Only the portion of the kids that fought with me. V'chelek hanashim asher halchu iti. The people who watch the stuff. They're all part of the splitting the booty. Anan Eshkol Mamre, his friends who helped him, they sat and watched their belongings while they went to war. So the first thing is, why didn't Avram take anything from Sodom? Who does he take from? Who's no great tzaddik? Two other people that were no great tzaddikim. He took lots of money from them. Who did he take a fortune of money from? Paro. Paro's a big tzaddik. And also Avimelech. What's going on? Is there a real big difference between Paro, who was really, who just took Sarah, and he has to get them out of the country before somebody else takes her? That's how bad it was over there. It was worse than Sodom. So why does he take money from Paro and not take any money from Melech Sodom? Second of all, he did take money from Melech Sodom. He gave away to the things. 10% to the Kohen who shows up in the middle, who? Malki Tzedek Melech Shalom. Who Kohen Lekel Elyon? He is the spiritual leader of the world up until that point, because we know until Avram is selected as the chosen. Noah was the previous one, and who carried on the tradition of Noah and had the yeshiva. He had a yeshiva. What was it known as? Yeshiva of Sheva Ever, which is a couple generations. He carried the tradition of belief in Hashem, the mitzvahs of Hashem. They were the hope of the world. They were the nevuah of the world, so to speak. So he gives him meiser. So Rashi says, look, it didn't mean that he gave him meiser from the booty. It means that he gave him meiser from his home. But other Mefarshim, most of them Mefarshim don't learn that. Rambam doesn't learn that way. Or HaMakodesh doesn't learn that way. Nobody learns that way, with the exception of Rashi. So he took plenty of money from Sodom. So what do you? It's contradictory. On the one hand, you tell me I don't want michut v'atzruch now. On the other hand, you're taking a fortune,
But he didn't take it
10%, but not personally. So what difference does it
Big
make? I mean, if you're taking, you're taking. If you're not taking, you're not taking.
No, it's a big difference because the other people that he gave to, they'll keep that stuff for themselves.
Yeah, but if Avram's so wealthy, so he'll say, listen, guys, leave this stuff. It's treif. I'll pay you out of pocket. He could have easily paid them out of pocket, but didn't. So, in order to understand this, we have to go to one step deeper. What is really going on over here? What was this whole story with Melech Sodom? What was this conversation, and why was it an interrupted conversation? Everybody with me so far? Am I clear? Okay. So if you look more deeply, Chazal tell us that the Melech Sodom came wagging his tail. Kishkesh es zanvo. What was he wagging his tail about? Not a very complimentary word. Describe a person. Like when a dog wags his tail, and Charlie's been so good today, I want to say anything poo-poo. Okay. So they're excited, they're enthusiastic, they're happy about, I'm not going to but I'm assuming that they're feeling good about themselves, right? Feeling happy, as opposed to feeling afraid or miserable. So therefore, what was he so happy about? It says that he had a miracle, that he was the only one who rose out of the lion pit. Miraculously. You know when he did it? Avram speeds by, and all of a sudden, like an elevator, he comes up from underground, from the bowels of the earth, which had swallowed him alive. He rises up, and he says, hey, why was that unhappy? People said, another miracle. What was the first miracle of Abraham?
He came out of the furnace.
He comes out of the fiery furnace. Now, it's like Houdini lahavdo. Not only did he escape the fire, but he escaped the lime pit. I mean, he even lifted out Melech Sodom out of the lime pit. It was really to have people believe in Abraham. But Melech Sodom, being who he was, assumed that it was
Because of him.
also, or maybe primarily. And that's what he says, Likraso, the Medrash says he came to meet Avram. What is he really communicating to Avram? My partner, my equal, my friend. The rest of the world is picking Avram to be the spiritual leader. Okay? But we know, like in Yahadus, there's different roles to play. What are the three primary positions of leadership in Am Yisrael? You could be the Melech, or what? You could be the Nasi, which is a Melech.